part of this bigger vision of what we wanted and who we wanted to be. And it was the most exhilarating year of our lives, and the one that I will always remember. We learned how to surf. My two youngest were too small, but we learned how to surf. Everyone else did. And we met so many amazing families and made so many amazing friends. And it really did change our lives. But it was actually terrifying to put away everything that you knew and everything that was comfortable and to take the leap to do something more.
Melissa Smith is the founder and thought leader of the Family Development Movement. Melissa shows parents how to transform their family cultures, creating relationships that last, intentionally grow together, and find the courage to live the life they want for their family. Melissa also helps financial advisors have family brand conversations with their clients. This helps them to differentiate themselves in the market, so they become known as financial advisors who value holistic health and wealth of their clients rather than just being transactional based. She co-hosts the Family Brand podcast with her husband, Chris, which debuted at number 2 in the kids and family category on Apple. Huge congratulations. Mm-hmm. She's a mother of 5 and a real estate investor. I am full of admiration for you because I know your children are all at home and, they range from around 6 to teenagers. And on top of that, you've managed to create this amazing business and juggle all aspects of your life. So huge kudos to you. And thank you so much for being here. I'd love to get into, the nitty gritty of how you've managed to achieve the success that you have, and also how your work relates to financial advisors and what they can learn from you today that would help them to grow their business. So what role do you think your mindset has played in the success you've achieved, not just in your business, but also, in your family life as well, and being able to do the two things together?
Yes, thank you for having me today. And that is such a great question. I feel like, I used to work as a nurse, and as I've transitioned into this entrepreneurial space, it's been so interesting to see what a big role mindset really does play in all of it. I feel like there's days, even hours, where it's like 1 minute if you're left to your own devices, you're like, this is going great. Like, I love this. And then something happens, and then 20 minutes later, you're feeling like, why am I even doing this? I should just quit now. And so I feel like, with the ups and downs of parenthood as well, mindset is everything. Like, to keep in perspective why you're doing this, what your end goal is, and what you're committed to building, I think is everything.
Yeah. Were you always clear about your end goal, or was this something that you dived in hoping for the best?
I think it's both. I think you start in hoping for the best and kind of having a vision. You're like your current best thinking of what you want it to look like, but then inevitably things change along the way. So for example, lately I've been feeling like, so I have this business and we talk to families, and we also help advisors have these conversations with families. But even lately, that's been my path for the last 4 years. But even lately, I'm like, maybe I actually want to speak more directly to mothers than entire families. And so I think as your business and your life even evolves, sometimes that vision changes, but it helps to always have at least something that you're working towards.
Yeah. And also you bring your own experience and your own expertise to it. So how do you believe that financial advisors can grow these relationships with their clients? Because this is something that you excel at. You know how to do that. So rather than them being transactional, what steps would they be able to take that would help them to develop these deeper relationships, so they don't just look after their clients, but they get to look after their clients' kids as they get older, and it just goes on like that because they become such a trusted source for that family?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I'll answer it in a little indirectly and then come back to it. I'm going to start with a story though. And it's actually the story of how my husband and I decided to start this company called Family Brand. And the way that happened is my husband had a client that he had been working with, and they said, "Thank you for the work that you've been helping us do. Because of the work we've done, we have more clarity than we've ever had before. And this work is going to impact our business for the next 100 years." And
Wow.
my husband thought, wow, 100 years, like that's amazing that a work that I'm doing now could impact the next 100 years. But he thought, that how cool would that be if I could do the same thing in my family? If the work that I do and the things that we build in our family, if that could impact for the next 100 years. And I don't know all the statistics, but there are a lot of statistics talking about wealth and how oftentimes wealth is lost like after 3 generations in a family. And so that was kind of playing in the back of his mind. If we could build a strong family today, that could impact generations later, and not just financially, but the family could be intact and could be like living these family values that we established today. How cool would that be? And so we kind of took our family through this process that he had outlined in his business. And but it was an experiment because it was for businesses, and we're a family, we're not a business. But asking these kind of questions like, what do you want to be known for? What do you stand for as a family? And I think as advisors have that same opportunity to not just provide financial guidance or financial, be a financial advisor, but I think there's a real opportunity to help these families be successful generationally. And if the families are successful generationally, then that's what leads to these deeper relationships, where you're continuing to help the children and the grandchildren. But that can't happen if the family itself is not still intact and thriving.
Yeah, and families show up in so many different combinations these days. It's not just a nuclear family, there's blended families, single parent families, etc. So what mindset shift would a financial advisor need to make in order to start thinking in this new, bigger, deeper way?
Yeah, I think that oftentimes, it is a mindset thing, I think, and it is showing up as more of a leader. There's you can be a financial advisor, but I think the most powerful thing that a lot of times these families are looking for is someone who will lead them in these conversations. And I'm feeling empowered that I can talk to these families about more than just their money. I can be a leader and almost a mentor to these families, and asking them these questions more than just, yeah, where should we put this money, or what do we do in the event of this? But asking them again, what are the things that are most important to you as your family? And it is a mindset thing, like feeling that you have the opportunity and you have the not just the opportunity, but the permission, I guess, to have these conversations with the families, even though they don't know that's what they've hired you to do, but you 100% are a leader to them and can show them the way.
What would you say to any financial advisor listening, thinking, I don't have the confidence to do that because, I don't know what to ask. What if they don't want me to ask? What if they give me a negative answer about this? They just see me as a transactional person who looks after their money. They don't want to share all their family stuff with me, etc. So what would you say to them, people who don't have that, who don't feel confident about taking this step at the moment?
Yeah, I think you could start small. And I think in every little win you have builds confidence. So starting small might look like, if they have children, it could be like asking them, hey, what is the most important thing that we pass on to your children besides the money? Like, what do you want to make sure that your children have learned from you? It could be, starting with that conversation. And then later on, it can lead to more, where you're like helping them walk through, hey, what are your family values? What is your family vision? But I think just starting small until you get some confidence in it and realizing like, oh, this is not as hard as it maybe feels right now. and getting some wins, like with families really starting to open up to you and realizing like this is so much deeper than just the money. It's like there's so much relationships and happiness tied up in this. And at the end of this client's life, the thing that they are going to want most is to know that these relationships are healthy and thriving. And families do care, like, where's my money going? But I've never met anyone that at the end of their life, that was their final thoughts, is like the money. It's always about my family and those type of relationships.
Yeah, a family can thrive in so many ways, through great relationships, health, interconnectedness, wealth. There are so many things, and being able to set up the next generation to be the happiest it can be. Obviously, we can't control everything, but we do our bit. Must be such a fulfilling feeling to think that you've done everything you can.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that is really what families want, even though like I said, they don't know that they're hiring you to do that. But if you can help them achieve that, I think that that's everything.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because we were talking about the clients helping them to understand their values and what they want and their vision. But the financial advisors, they need to do that for themselves. I believe I'm a really strong advocate of knowing what you want. And working with my own clients, what do you want? Well, I'd like to make more money, or I'd like to spend more time outside of my business. But, what do you really want? And have you found, for yourself and thinking about your own family, have you found that an easy thing to do? Or is that something that you find, are you resistant to thinking like that? Or do you find it easy to think like that about what you really, truly want? And do you believe that you think big, or do you think, well, actually, maybe I'm holding back a little bit and I could think on a bigger scale?
Yes, I think that me personally, I think I go through phases where I feel like, oh yes, I am thinking big. I'm living like to my fullest right now. And then, for whatever reason, I fall back into this like, oh, I'm not putting myself out there, like whether it's on social media or I'm just kind of playing small, playing my husband calls it playing. Are you playing to win? Or are you playing not to lose? Like I'm like playing not to lose. And then, but that's the funny thing though, is it always feels scary in the moment to play big and to like, whether that's putting yourself out again on social media or making those phone calls to like your dream clients, knowing you might be, rejected. But it's like, it always feels better. Like when you're really, at least for me, when you're really like trying and going for what you want. And I think that, like I said earlier, vision, I think you go forward in a direction and it can kind of change, but as long as you're working towards something, like that always feels better. Like I have one example for my family personally is in 2020, we lived in the same house for, I don't know, 8 years or so. And one of our family values in that time when we've been living in that house is we had established a family value that says Smiths are adventurous, Smith being my last name. And it was something that we kind of believed, but we actually probably weren't that adventurous, but it was more something that we aspired to would be more adventurous. And in 2020, the world being what it was, any business we were doing went virtual. And so we decided, we're not bound to this home or to this town anymore. Where would we want to go? Like, what would we want to do if we were to really live into Smiths Are Adventurous? And so we decided, let's sell our house and our cars and everything. And where would we go? And we decided, let's go to Hawaii. And so we sold everything. We moved to Hawaii. We lived there for over a year. And it was terrifying and it was scary. And people were like, what are you doing? And we were like, we don't actually even know ourselves what we're doing. But it was like part of this bigger vision of what we wanted and who we wanted to be. And it was the most exhilarating year of our lives. And the one that I will always remember, we learned how to surf. My two youngest were too small, but we learned how to surf. Everyone else did. And we met so many amazing families and made so many amazing friends. And it really did change our lives, but it was actually terrifying to put away everything that you knew and everything that was comfortable and to take the leap to do something more, like to live into more of who we wanted to be. And so that was like a moment of, wow, we're like really going for it. And then, we slip back into like, we achieved that dream. And then you slip back into like, okay, now we don't maybe have as big of a vision. And so we have to reevaluate and be like, okay, so what's our next thing? Where do we go from here? But always, evaluating and striving for something.
And what's your next big adventure? Because you have the evidence that you can do it and thrive in that situation. I love that story. So when you're feeling, you're just holding back a little bit, in your marketing or somewhere in your business, how do you get out of that sort of leaning back and start leaning forward into your business? How do you talk yourself into it?
Some days it's easier than others, I would say. But I think more than anything, for me, it helps to be in conversation with other people who are also doing it and who are also really trying to go for it and achieve their goals and dreams. I think that really helps with mindset, is surrounding yourself with people who are similar to you in that way. And then at the end of the day, you just have to do it. And so I keep referencing to social media because that's present for me right now. Is I want to be more present. I don't like putting my face on social media, but that's where a lot of my clients, consume things as on social media. And so for me this month, I'm like, okay, this month I am going to challenge myself for 30 days. I'm going to put my face on Instagram every day for 30 days and making these commitments and keeping these commitments to myself, and setting myself up for success. One way I've done that is I have a friend that I'm like, okay, let's go. Will you go live with me on this one day? Like, hold me accountable to this goal I have for myself. Those are just a couple of things that come to mind of how to push through that.
I love the accountability bit, because when you bring someone else into it, then we're much less likely to not do it, because almost like a sense of pride, you don't want to lose face by not showing up. So telling someone else that you're going to do it is a brilliant way of going ahead and doing it. So when you have setbacks, your business, life generally, etc., how do you pick yourself up? How do you get past that setback?
Inevitably, we all have setbacks. And so I think sometimes it's easy to feel like I'm the only one, like no one else is experiencing this. So I think that's important to remember, is that it's not me. It's not anything that I'm necessarily doing wrong, but realizing that this is life. Like, this is part of the human experience, is having these setbacks. And sometimes I think it takes it's not instantaneous sometimes, where you realize like, oh, I'm having this setback. Like, I just need to jump back up and like get right back into it. I think for me, sometimes it takes a while. I love journaling. For me, sometimes when, there's something going on like with my mindset, or I'm just feeling off, sometimes if I journal, that helps me like really get out like, okay, what is actually going on here? And for some reason on paper, it comes out for me a lot easier than just my thoughts, or even talking to someone. It helps me really, figure it out. So that's one thing I do. And then I guess I would say that's like the biggest thing that I do. Like, that happened to me last week. I was having a struggle with one of my own children, and I couldn't quite figure out like, what is this that's happening? And then, in journaling, I realized like, you know what, I'm just like being a nag lately. I just need to stop being nagging this teenager. Like, I'm probably not a fun person to be around right now as a mother. His experience of me as a mother is probably not good. And I think that is, what's getting in the way of us having a better relationship right now is me. And so that's what I love to do. And there's other things, but for me, I think that's maybe the biggest thing.
And that's such a big thing. It's almost like you can step back and be the observer of the situation rather than being caught up in it. And it takes a big person to be able to say, I'm playing a role in this. and this is my responsibility. This is what I can change about myself, rather than just blaming the other person and being the victim in this. So that's absolutely amazing to be able to see the pattern. We don't sometimes see the pattern in the behavior, do we? We just think, well, there's a one-off behavior, but often we're repeating the same patterns with several people in our lives. I remember I did a silent retreat last year, one of the best things I've ever done, 4 days of silence. You get a lot of thinking time.
Mm-hmm.
And I started looking at my relationships and how I showed up in some relationships. And I thought, I don't behave well in some relationships. It's a really great way just to take a step back and observe and think, okay, I can see the role that I played in this. And it's not a sign of weakness. I think it's a sign of great strength to do that.
Yeah, I think today, just the world being what it is, unless you're really intentional about creating that time to step back or that time to be the silent observer, it isn't going to happen. Like, you're not going to have that time, with the cell phones and the TV and all the things, just the busyness of life, especially if you're raising a family right now, unless you intentionally create that time. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. And I found that time to be so valuable for those personal insights and personal development kind of opportunities for me, realizing like where my gaps are and where I want to make changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about work-life balance, which is what it's really like, having time for yourself, your family, as well as time for work. How do you manage work-life balance? And is there anything that you found has worked particularly well for you?
That's a question I feel like I'm always trying to figure out, but I guess I don't think it's ever like figured out. I feel like I want to get to a place where I'm like, I have figured it out and it's executing perfectly. But I feel like there's seasons. And right now, for example, I'm in the season of summer where all 5 of my kids are home all day, every day. And I'm not able to lean into that work and maybe as much as I want to. And sometimes, some days I feel myself getting a little bit frustrated with that because there's things, that I still want to be working towards. And I think it's really important to remember, like, okay, this, next 6 weeks or whatever, this is going to be a season of more family, and that's okay. And realizing that it's not always a perfect balance. Sometimes it's more work, sometimes it's more, kid stuff and family, but constantly evaluating like, okay, where am I going to lean? Where am I going to put my efforts at this time? And life, I'm just talking about summer, but when I had like new little babies, those were probably a very long time of leaning more into family because they require so much care. Or if, and not getting, I think the other thing is not getting upset about it and wishing it wasn't this way or it wasn't that way, because it is that way. And so doing your best to navigate it and realizing like, if it wasn't supposed to be this way, it wouldn't be this way. And it's okay that it's hard and it's okay that it's messy. And I'm not doing it 100% well every time, but just giving yourself, I think also giving yourself grace and patience with the mess ups and the not getting it right, and knowing that you're trying your best.
Yeah, absolutely. And my kids have grown up, but I do remember what it was like at the beginning, and it's messy and you're trying to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And what you said is so true. It's just being kind to yourself, giving yourself the grace to know that this is just a phase and the next phase will come into play and that will be a different phase. But I've got this real, I know there's so many financial advisors who are listening, who are really working very hard, very long hours, and not taking the time for self-care, and spending a healthy amount of time away from their business. And to be able to structure that into the day, whether it's scripting or, just going for a walk, whatever it is, pays dividends, doesn't it? You may think, well, I haven't got time to do that. But what you get back from taking that time out is just enormous. It's a fantastic return on your time. So I'd just like to finish off with asking you, what is the biggest lesson that life has taught you so far?
You have great questions, Nina. The biggest lesson, I think that so part of my story is that my husband and I, we've been together 20 years. And around year 4 of our marriage, we were separated and almost divorced. We had 2 little boys at the time. And I think I thought that my life would just, that I could just operate by default and then my life would turn out the way that I hoped or the way that I wanted. And through that experience and some others, I've realized that no, life, if I'm just operating by default, I am not going to get to the outcome that I want. Life, for myself and for my kids and my family, it must be lived by design. Like you're saying, identifying what do you want and then working towards that. I think so often we live in this place of like, we're afraid to commit to what we want, or we're afraid to maybe say what we want. But only when we do that and get that clarity can we then start to achieve those things that we want. It won't happen by just coasting or by default.
Brilliant. And that brings us back to the very beginning of our conversation, which is vision, helping your clients to have a vision. But we need to have a vision before we can help our clients to have their vision. And what you said about we can't create the life we want by default. It's chaotic. Mm-hmm. But actually designing it and deciding what you want, going to the end of that vision, what do I want in life? That is so important. Well, brilliant lesson. I love that. And it's, thank you so much for that. And for everyone who's listening, I hope you got a lot out of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.